Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Hello, my friends. It's Lynda. Welcome back once again to the Pilates Goddess podcast. And I have with me for the second time on the podcast, Allan Menezes. And once again, Alan and I have known each other for a very long time. The partners of my first studio in Pennsylvania were actually clients of Alan's in Australia, which is how we first got to know each other. And we have kind of continued following each other's work ever since. Now, Alan, as you may know, if you listen to the first interview, is the person who brought Pilates to Australia. And actually probably to that whole side of the world. Yeah. Because I'm thinking there wasn't really Pilates in New Zealand. There wasn't really Pilates in even in Indonesia and those areas. Until you brought it there.
Yep, it was. Hi, Lynda. Thanks for the invite once again. I'm really, really happy to be here. Always great to catch up with you. Yes, it was actually the first studio in the Southern Hemisphere, which is quite a thing because no one really considered the Southern Hemisphere as livable for centuries, long time ago.
Right.
And I mean, even the English sent all their convicts to Australia. Can you believe it? And once they got to this, said, wow, sunshine and beaches. This is the colony I want to be in. Now everyone
right, exactly. It's true. Now everyone's like, can we go there? Because apparently it's very nice and it's getting not so nice here. Now, in our last discussion, Alan, we sort of ended talking a little bit about Pilates teacher training programs. We talked a little bit about the kind of horrifying nature of neutral spine and how it's being used and abused as a concept by Pilates professionals and actually fitness professionals. And so I brought you on again today because that is the conversation that I would like to continue. I am hearing from a lot of new Pilates teachers who have done online only certifications, and even some who have done in-person certifications, but haven't quite had the structure that they need in terms of getting their hours together and, getting apprentice time. And I think, you and I both started teaching during a time where we pretty much apprenticed. And that's how we learned. Like, I know for me, there really wasn't a dedicated structured certification program. Of course, I took the test and did that work once Joan started, Physical Mind or the Institute for the Pilates Method, where you and I were both founding members. But realistically, that I think was the first training program that kind of brought, everything together, was comprehensive, leveled the work, and taught all of the modifications and variations that people need, as well as the full form of all of the exercises. And even though I think, Physical Mind is considered to be a more contemporary certification, if you look at the exercise list that we developed and worked on while we were there, it's pretty much the classical order of the exercises. In the way that we pretty much assume Joseph Pilates taught them. And I'm feeling like now we're getting people who don't know the order of the exercises, who aren't getting all of the full exercises, and aren't getting modifications and variations. Are you seeing this as well?
I'm seeing a lot of it, actually. And I think you tend to see a lot more of it when you go onto Instagram and you start looking at people who are putting in variations of Pilates work, which is fine because some of it is very acrobatic on the reformers and It shows a different aspect of how the reformer can be used and things like that. But these are not the classical movements that one works with when you're setting out on your Pilates journey. And if people are going to take their Pilates journey seriously and call themselves Pilates instructors, they need to know the original structures of all the routines, whether it's Wonder Chair, Reformer, Floor. They need to know all the basic exercise. They need to know the format. They need to know each structure of each exercise and how it was taught. For example, if we just think of single leg stretch, and I've seen people who've been trained by the organizations, they come to me to do a different workshop, for example, something on a roller or something like that. And I said, look, let's just use the single leg stretch as a sample exercise to see, I just want to see how you're teaching or what your teaching abilities are. And they only bring their knee up to tabletop. They don't bring the knee back to their shoulder. If you see the original photos of Joe Pilates in his Return to Life Through Contrology and Your Health, those two books, which are standard, which every single Pilates instructor must read as part of their qualifications. They must read them so that they know the man's thinking. In those pictures, which are the original Pilates pictures, he's got his knee touching his shoulder.
Yes.
It's all the way back to there. And if you notice in those photos as well, he's actually got a tattoo. I never noticed that before, but he's got a tattoo. And the one thing also about single leg stretch in the Joe Pilates photos, and I know I'm criticizing, the man himself, in one of the stretches when he's got his, I'm not sure which knee it is to the shoulder, he does have, say, for example, his right hand on his right ankle and his left hand on his right knee. But when he swaps legs over, he hasn't swapped the hands over to left hand, left ankle. It's still the same way. So that was just my observation of the photographs. I'm not sure if anyone else has picked that up. So it's just, and that's why I think instructors really need to find out why. So when I ask these people, why do you bring the knee just back to tabletop when you're doing single leg stretch? They say, oh, it's to work your abs. I'm going, the single leg stretch is not to work your abs exercise. If you want to work your abs, do the 100. Do double leg stretch, do other things like that, do crisscross, a variation of single leg stretch. So because the point of single leg stretch is to, yes, get a bit of a curvature in your upper back and things like that, control your movement forward, because when you're changing legs, you don't want to drop the head and shoulders back. But it's to mobilize your hip joints and your knee joints as well when you look at the mechanics of the movement. So, and also it does get you to work your abs when you're changing legs and you're taking the other leg as low as you possibly can. As long as your shoulder blades are off the ground and your back is flat, that's fine, because then you're working your abs as well in that changeover when you're not holding onto anything. So in some cases, I say to people, this is single leg stretch and a subheading knee to shoulder stretch so that they know what the point of the exercise is rather than bring it to tabletop. So again, knowing the structures, they need to know every exercise the way the original should be taught. Then you can vary it.
Right. Because if somebody comes to me and they're like, they just are, 4 weeks out of their rehab after their hip replacement, we're probably just going to go to tabletop.
Yep.
Or maybe, and that's going to be that for them. But that's because that's how you deal with a refurbished joint, and especially a newly refurbished joint. And what I'm finding is that a lot of teachers are getting really confused because what they're learning as the exercise is a modification of the exercise. Yep. And they're not even being taught why that modification is. I don't know when did we start only doing tabletop? I don't even know when that happened. But all of a sudden, everyone was just doing tabletop, and they were wondering why their clients' hip flexors were getting strained.
Yep.
And I was like, it's because you're not letting them bring their knees into their chest. That's why.
That's right. Because then what happens when you go to double leg stretch? Because in double leg stretch, you start with your knees back towards your armpits before you start going into the next movement. So if you're going to mobilize your hip joints, because single leg stretch comes before double leg stretch in the sequencing, you need to get the mobility into your hip joints so you can progress to the next exercise. because then otherwise when you go to double leg stretch, when you draw your knees back to your armpits, they're not going to come back that close because you haven't mobilized the hip joint.
Right. And then you might take too much of that movement and pressure into your lower back.
That's
So
right.
it's kind of interesting to me that we're kind of teaching people, but, in this way of, this is somehow modified, so it's going to be better for everybody. But what ends up happening is we put people into a position where they actually can overstretch, overmove, and injure their lower backs, which is precisely what they're coming to Pilates to avoid.
That's right. Yeah, and look, and it's to do with today's lifestyle. We sit down, so therefore we're doing a lot of sitting down. And if we're not sitting down, then we're standing, which isn't the majority of the day, and depending on what job you're doing. But the majority of people are sitting down. I've got clients who sit down 8 hours a day in their jobs, and I'm going, get up every 20 minutes and move around. But because of those angles, you're at a right angle all day long, with your femur to your torso and things like that. So you're not getting a stretch on your hip flexors. So you're not getting mobility into your hip joints. I mean, get up every 20 minutes and do a squat. Get up every 20 minutes and do the swan to, get some spinal extension, things like that. Just do single leg stretch. Get up every 20 minutes, do a single leg circle just to mobilize your joints. So there is a thing. We've got clients who have, back pain. I mean, everyone says, oh, I've got back pain, but it's just there. I just live with it. And I said, what level is it? About a 2 out of 10. I'm going, yeah, but you don't have to have back pain. So I have a client, the majority of my clients are middle-aged. And they've been coming to me for years, just as a program. They like an exercise program, like everyone does with Pilates mostly. And I've created these 5-minute wake-up stretches, which you'll find on YouTube. If you look under Menezes Pilates 5-minute wake-up, something to that effect, it'll come up.
I will put a link to it in the show notes so people see it. Yeah.
And it's just 5 minutes before you get out of bed. Go to the toilet first, then get back into bed and just do these stretches. And this one client said after 10 years of having back pain, she does these stretches every morning. She's had absolutely no back pain when she wakes up in the morning. And they're very, very simple stretches. They're not complicated at all. And it wakes you up. So it's getting to people to move is the thing, but getting this, if you're going to be doing a Pilates class, coming back to our conversation of sequencing and the format, stick to the format because there was a reason for it. Pilates did it so that you could work through various sections of your body one at a time, and then that part moves to the next part, moves to the next part. And that's what he was very good at. He didn't just suddenly pluck exercises out of the air and go, oh, I'll do a single leg stretch first, and then I'll do swan straight after that. He didn't do it that way. There was a sequencing and there was a reason for it. And so we need to go back to the roots every so often. Make your variations, but make your variations according to the person, not according to changing exercise routine.
And also, another thing that I'm hearing a lot and seeing a lot is newer teachers who are not taught kind of that really the basic exercises that we all start with are good movement screens, right? So I'm hearing teachers who are like, so what kind of functional movement screens are you guys doing with your clients before you start working? And my answer is, well, if you're in a studio, if you're in a brick and mortar studio, get them on the reformer and start your footwork. And you'll pretty much see what you need to know. If their shoulders are rounding, they're going to round in the footwork. If they're tucking their tailbone, it's going to happen in the footwork. If they're, whatever it is, one hip's out, they've got you'll see everything. And you'll start making corrections. And while you're doing it, they're exercising so that you're not taking them through this like special movement screen that, who knows what or why. I mean, there are very good functional movement screens out there. We know that. But all of them that I've done involve moving. It's like you're going into the squat. Which hip are you sitting into? You're trying a lunge, which, knee isn't coming down. It's all becomes about exercising and watching the client as they're moving. And somehow it's very interesting to me. We've kind of scared. We've got these Pilates teachers who are almost scared to let their clients move. They're like, let's just do tiny things and keep them in a very small range of motion and just keep them very, very safe. And I'm like, they could do that on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, I've come across the same thing where I've had clients who come from other studios, and I said, right, show me how you do this exercise. And it's such a barely small movement. I'm going, what are you doing? You're not moving. And they're going, yeah, but, we can't let this move and we can't let that move. And we've got to work, so precisely, because precision is one of the principles of the Pilates method. And they've come from instructors who've moved them so minimally that they've got hardly any movement. And if I, for example, work like that with clients, they'd leave, because some of my clients have been triathletes or people like that, and they'll go, what is this? We're not moving. We're not feeling anything. We're not getting anywhere. But another instructor would say, no, but you've got to get it really, really, really right the first time. And I'm going, no, you don't. Just get them to move.
They've all been moving outside of the studio. Okay. Exactly. We've all been moving. They're doing things. They're with you, at the most, maybe 5 hours a week, maybe, right? For people who are really dedicated and are doing like an everyday situation. That's 5 hours out of the week. Okay. They're doing many other things when they're not with us.
Yeah.
And they are moving and they're doing stuff and they're lifting heavy objects and they're traveling and they're putting bags in overhead compartments and they're going grocery shopping and they're picking up their grandchildren and they are out there doing stuff. And that is precisely, I think, what Joseph Pilates saw and knew was, let's just get people moving.
Yeah.
And let's get them moving in a way that's going to actually help them function outside of the studio. I was teaching one of my, I teach a few half-an-hour classes a week on a platform called Revel, which is for women over 40, right? It's just like a safe space community for women over 40. And, I'm teaching class, and one of the women actually said to me, what I love about this is I only do this with you 3 days a week for half an hour. But I can not only tell how much stronger I'm getting in what we do here, but in all the other things that I'm doing when I'm not with you. The other exercise is getting better. I'm able to stand up longer. I can move my furniture around, whatever it looks like, that's getting better. And I think, as teachers, we always have to have our eyes on the prize.
Yep.
And the prize is not the client doing a perfect teaser in the studio. The prize is the client going out there and doing whatever it is they're doing in a way that's enjoyable and doesn't hurt.
Yeah, even if it's a bushwalk or something like that, because you find clients, I've got clients who have a couple of feet problems as well.
Right.
So what I do is I get, as one of the warm-ups at the beginning of the class for these clients, I'll get them to kneel down on the floor and get a very thin roller. It's only about, it's 7 centimeters in diameter, like 3.5 inches in diameter. And it's a roller which is probably about 1.5 foot long. And I get them to put that behind their knees when they're kneeling and then sit on it. And then move their hips from side to side. And that really gets into their calves, really, really gets into their calves. But we do 3 different positions for that. We've got your calves in parallel. Then we have your knees together with your feet wide open. And then your toes together with your knees wide open. So it gets different angles of your calves. Kills like crazy. But when they get up and move, their foot can mobilize better when they're walking. So things like that, where you go, right, you've got very stiff ankle joints. Let's not get you onto the reformer first to do your footwork and calf stretches and things. Let's loosen up your calves first. Then when you get onto the reformer and you do your calf stretches, you'll see how much further your heel will go under the foot bar. The other thing about just on the side of sequencing and things like that is when I look at the foot bar on the reformer, and I've never seen it still to date, I've measured the center of the foot bar on all the reformers that I use, and I put a mark on there with a white line down the middle of the foot bar. So then when people get on it and they don't look at the foot bar, I'll say, have a look at your center of your feet on the bar. and the feet are slightly off center to one side. And I'm going, now you can see what you're doing. So now every time they get on and they look at the foot bar, they place their feet in the right position, because they could be slightly off to the right because the right side of their back might be tight. So therefore they're twisting a bit.
Right.
And then I said, look, check your hips. Are your hips in the center? Put your thumb on your hip, search for the edge of the carriage with your little finger. Is it the same distance each side? So they do their own self-adjustments by me training them rather than me coming and telling them, move this, move this. They need to be responsible for their own body.
But it's also, number one, it's that issue of autonomy, right? And of responsibility for our bodies. But it's also, another thing that I'm hearing, which I did an interview with Allison Limehouse from Rollology, and we were talking specifically about how she designed her rollers, right? Because she basically designed the rollers, like everything is printed on them in a certain way so that they can externally cue. So that if you're in the right place, your hand is on the R and the other hand is here, wherever that is. It was interesting, Alicia Angaro did an online workshop at the beginning of COVID, and it was on external cueing. So that, if you're in a mask and you're not getting near your, and this was when, especially in New York, we were like, even if we were together, we still had to be 3 feet apart and everything masked. And she was showing ways on each apparatus to use external cues for clients. I still find that, and it's got to be happening in Pilates teacher training programs because it's so omnipresent, that people are so interested in what their clients are feeling internally. And in all of the discussions I've had, like with my friend and colleague, Greg Udan, who's a, neuroscientist and a dancer and a Pilates pro, he's like, people really have no idea what they're feeling in their body. I mean, they know a little bit, but really not a lot. And some people feel a lot, some people feel a little. And, we've discussed this. It's like, I've had shingles so many times on my right sciatic nerve that basically that hip is relatively numb. It either is numb or it hurts. Like there's no in between. If I don't feel it, I know it's fine. But that also means that I don't always feel where it is. So if I'm in a class with another teacher, I'll say to them, just literally put my hip where it should be.
Yeah.
And I can hold it. I can try to maintain it, like once I'm there, but don't keep telling me how to adjust my hip because I can't feel it. I have no idea where it is. So there that is. And if that's not your experience in your body, great, it's mine. So I'm fine with you manually placing my hip where you want it, and I'll try to maintain it in that place, and that's fine. Don't go by my internal feeling because it bears no resemblance to what's happening on the outside. And it's the same thing. I think we've all had that on the reformer foot bar. If you're anything like me, maintaining your strength and a healthy heart as you age is really important, because without muscle strength and without a healthy heart, you really won't have that great of a quality of life. And as you know, I am a huge fan of having improved quality of life, not just for myself, but for all people, including those who are frail, disabled, and in need of care as they age. To help prevent the natural decline of muscle and heart function that always happens as our bodies age, it's important to make sure you're getting the nutrition your body needs. And not just any nutrition, but science-backed nutrition like life from the Amino Company. You can take Amino Company's Life, which is a 100% science-backed formula. In fact, the initial research was funded by NASA as part of your normal routine to help maintain muscle mass as you age, maintain good heart health, and possibly increase longevity. This is a patented blend of essential amino acids that work to improve quality of life, so that you can stay healthy and active as you age. Life has been shown in clinical trials to clinically improve blood lipid profiles by significantly reducing triglycerides, LDL, VLDL, and total cholesterol. It has also been shown to improve physical function in patients with heart failure. And this is all backed up by actual science. Okay? Life is designed for heart health and active aging, which, as we both know, is crucial for total lifespan. Now, I drink Life every day. I use the all-natural watermelon flavor because I basically like my drinks to be all-natural, but know that they have tons of other fabulous flavors for you to enjoy. Life works by triggering muscle protein synthesis, which is the body's mechanism for repairing and building muscle. When tested against any protein source, Life is more than 3 times more effective on a gram-for-gram basis at stimulating muscle growth and repair. And I know how important this is for my quality of life and staying healthy as I age. You can check out Life and check out the science by visiting aminoco.com/goddess. That's aminoco.com/goddess. I've been on the lookout for something to help support healthy blood flow and lipid levels. I have issues with high cholesterol. And when I go for my physical in March, I'm really interested to see what my lipid levels look like as compared to how they normally are. Plus, it tastes great and is easy to incorporate in my daily routine because you just mix it with water. Amino Co's Life was created by former Harvard professor and world-renowned clinical researcher Dr. Robert Wolfe. And right now, you can get 30% off when you use code GODDESS. So head on over to aminoco.com/goddess and save 30% on your first order and get a free gift with your first purchase.
Yeah.
I get on the reformer to do my footwork and I look up and my feet are inevitably off to the side. Always. I'm home. I go to do an elephant or a downward dog just on the mat. And I look down at my feet and I'm like, yeah, need to adjust where they are because they are not in any kind of line, with where I think they are. And again, it's the external looking at, oh, here's the edge of my mat. Here's where my hands are. Here's where my legs are. Something isn't matching here.
Yeah.
And I think as teachers that to focus on looking at our clients. Yes. I mean, what we want to know is, are you in pain or not? Like if it's not hurting you right now, we're good. And then really going for that external cueing so that people can figure out what they're doing in space. And that's how we learn.
That is. The other thing, just coming back a step, when I started learning, I learned by experience. So I was in a studio, which was open 7 days a week. I was in that studio, and this is the studio where Alan Herdman had trained the instructor. There were only 3 studios in the whole of Europe at the time, and all of them in London. And both of them had been taught by Alan Herdman. And I stumbled upon one of them, and I went there, and the very first time, and I had a back injury from a rugby accident when I was at university in Canada, went to England, was doing my master's, and stumbled upon the studio. My father gave me a leaflet saying, look, they're giving a free half-hour class. So I went along, and on that very first session, I felt my back on the reformer stretching, and I thought, wow, this will fix my back, because I had back pain every single day for 2 years. So I said to the guys, are you looking for instructors? And they said, yes, we are. And I said, look, I can come every day. I'm working 9 to 5, but but I can come every day, mornings, evenings, weekends. My time is yours. So I did a 2-hour workout every single day for 2 years, 7 days a week. That's how you learned. And back then, there were no courses. You just learned by sitting in the studio and listening and observing and things like that. So what they were taught, they taught you. But if they varied it from who taught them, then you learned that variation because you didn't know any better. You didn't know that you could go to another course because no other courses existed. So every single day for 2 years, I did a 2-hour workout. I was in the best shape of my life. My back pain disappeared after four months, and I was back playing squash again, not knowing I had a herniated disc in my back because I didn't have back pain.
Right.
So then after that, Alan Herdman actually approached me, called me up, and he said, come work for me. And I said, look, I'm extremely honored, but you don't know how I teach. And he said, do you know Elizabeth Jones? And I said, yes, I do. She's a client of mine. And, she's a tall, leggy Texan dancer with a couple of back operations. And he said, she's actually an instructor of mine. I've sent her to test you out. And she says, you're okay. Come to me. And Elizabeth and I still keep in touch. And she was teaching Pilates at Rice University. She's based in Texas. And we still keep in touch on Zoom. We're talking 40-something odd years ago. And so then I went to Alan. And then I learned a whole bunch of new stuff that I didn't learn from the people he trained. So then my experience expanded even further. And I said to Alan at the time, I said, Alan, you're really busy here. We keep having to tell the clients the same thing again and again and again. Why don't you have charts on the wall so they know what comes after toes apart, heels together, what comes after toes together on the bar, so they can then just move on and then we'll monitor them to make sure they're doing it correctly. And he refused. He said, no, they must all know the routine. This is the clients. The clients have to know the routine. So that's how strict he was back then.
And that's how Romana was. I mean, clients needed to know the routine. Clients clean their own equipment. I have found that for a lot of my clients, learning the routine actually works for them. A lot of them, in the studio, I mean, they're busy. They're paying a lot of money for me, partly for me to remember the stuff for them. Right. They're just like, I'm not going to teach. I'm not remembering all the spring settings. Let's not go there. But it was always, Joe wanted everybody to be able to do it on their own. Joe wanted autonomous clients. He wanted that level of kind of spread of his work to be, in every school, in every hospital, in pretty much every home, that everybody should be, doing these exercises and doing Pilates. And I think, we need to remember that. I'm also horrified, actually, at the number of Pilates teachers who know nothing about Joseph Pilates. There's a little bit more now, but, his books are available in the library. His books are available in ebook. His books are available on Kindle for like nothing. And you can even find, I think, Michael Miller had posted Return to Life, or at least the first few chapters of it, free on his website, 20 years ago. At the beginning, kind of at the beginning of the web. Let's just say that. But it's no longer than 20 years ago. And that work, to teach a body of work that somebody created, so much of, and then to kind of want to separate yourself from what he taught, right? Because you'll hear people saying that, well, Joe was, this, or Joe, was that. And it's like, but why are you still teaching his exercises?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing when, Joe had a particular way of doing things. I never heard from anywhere at all in all my training that I ever did where Joe said, when you lie on your back on the reformer, when you're on the floor, put yourself into neutral spine.
Never
heard it, never came across it. And now it was Australian physios that actually got neutral spine into Pilates. And I'm going, you've got to be kidding me. But we've had that discussion on neutral spine. Right. The other thing about the training, and coming back to the training and how people need to do the sequencing and all the rest of it. Jones, I mean, and it's just coming back to the point we say people don't know about Joe Pilates. Some people don't even know he was a person. Some instructors don't even know he's a person. Just going, just the Pilates method. But anyway, one of the things he said was, when you're breathing out, breathe out like you're wringing water out of a towel. Every last atom of air must come out of your lungs. And I look at my clients and going, when I do the initial assessment on them, I said, the exercise is not the most important thing. The breathing is the most important thing here. I said, breathe loudly. So if you breathe loudly, I can hear you breathe, whether it's in or out, because then when you're doing the exercise, I can tell if you're breathing correctly, whether it's in or out. And a lot of people, when they're doing some of the exercises, which are a little bit more challenging, they'll hold their breath and breathe out at the end of the movement. And I'm going, no, breathe. I need to hear you breathing from the beginning of the movement. So I'm not going to teach you the movement because your brain and your body now know the movement. I'm not going to say lift and low, lift and low. That's pointless. I don't want to hear you breathing. So start your breath out slightly before you start the movement and your core connects. Then your core is working for the entire movement. If you breathe out slightly after, or you start your breath out slightly after you start the movement, you don't have the same core connection. And I've done the tests on this where, I've had a person with their arm out, and anyway, it's a whole different thing, which I'll put online one day and show how the breathing really, really affects your core. Because I've done it on all my courses I've ever done, and it really makes such a difference to their stability as well. But when my clients breathe, and so I teach all the people that I've taught around the world, said, make sure your clients are breathing loudly so you can hear them, because then you don't have to cue the breathing. And also, if, for example, they're doing a single leg circle, don't say, lower your leg, raise your leg, lower your leg, raise your leg, because they're going to do it anyway. Just tell them to keep going, get the movement going, get the breathing going. Now focus on detail. But this is where the training falls down, because a lot of the training teach you the movement, they teach you the breathing, in through the nose for 5, out of the mouth for 5. And I think even I've changed that breathing, and I understand Joan Breitbart has changed.
In 4, out 6, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I do exactly the same thing. So somehow we could have sort of synced that in, because I can take a 4 count breath in and take exactly the same volume of air out on that 5 count. Take the same volume of air in. I can take the same volume of air in on a 2 count and breathe the same volume of air out on a 6 count. But when you take the air out on a 6 count, you get your core to work more. And that is the whole thing about the breathing and why it should be all the air out of your lungs. So if they're doing the breathing and if they're doing the movement, focus on the detail. And the detail should be, make sure your hip is placed correctly. Make sure you've got the external rotation continuously. Lengthen out of the socket so you can get more mobility into the joint. Make sure your shoulders are more relaxed. Make sure your palms are up when you're lying down on the ground, not palms down. And so even if you're doing, say, for example, single leg circle, and when you're doing single leg circle, you normally have the hands by your sides, palms down, if you're doing the full version. But if you start to get tired and you start pushing with your hands, your shoulder cuff will rotate anteriorly, and therefore you start to strain your neck. But if you have your palms up, and I know this is a variation of the original, if you have your palms up and you start getting tired and you push your hands down with your palms up, all you'll do is stabilize your lats and work your triceps. So you won't strain your neck and shoulders. So these little variations are there to tweak people because of the fact that we're sitting down, we're looking at tablets, we're looking at iPhones, where shoulders are rounding anyway all the time. But if you do your exercises lying on the reformer with your palms up, it opens your chest and it keeps your shoulders more stable. If you have your palms down, all you're doing is exacerbating what you do all day long is by rounding your shoulders, looking at tablets and looking at iPhones. So constantly, those variations make a difference.
And that becomes just an issue of, fascial tightness because people are in the same position all the time. Yes, ideally, can we keep the shoulders open and just do that little bit of internal rotation from the elbow? Sure, we can. But maintaining that for a really tired person at the end of their day when they've been round all day may not be doable. So basically, you could spend your entire session being upset about that and ways of dealing with that, or you could just let them flip their palms up and get on with the workout. And some of this is just literally just to get people moving. And that's the whole point. I always, I used to have to remind my trainees when I was doing teacher training that the people are here to exercise. They're actually here to move. They can do relaxation someplace else. They can meditate someplace else. That's not why they're in the Pilates studio, unless you're specifically teaching that for whatever reason. This is about getting stronger in all, in all of these ways, and it's strength and mobility and breath. And once you put them all together, people feel and function better.
Yeah.
So I think we both kind of agree here that if folks, number one, if people have already gone through any kind of teacher training program and have a certification, but still feel like they're floundering, still feel like they don't maybe know exactly what Joe taught and in what order. I mean, first I'll refer you back to my last podcast episode because there are links in those notes, and it's about the importance of the order of the exercises. So if folks look at, I believe it's episode 31, depending on when this comes out, they, will see, they'll hear me spout on for a long time, for half an hour, about the importance of the order, and have some links too, because there are so many free online resources, Alan, for the order of the exercises. And you can actually go in online now and see everybody's order. Like you can see the order that Joe wrote down. You can see Jay Grimes' order. You can see Romana's order. It's interesting that, there's slight differences, but they're all relevantly similar because, Joe did kind of teach and Clara taught, within this structure. And I remind people that the structure is freeing, that once you know the structure like we do, then you can add modifications and variations. But if you've only learned the modifications and variations, but never learned what the actual exercise is, then I don't understand how you're supposed to teach like that.
Yeah. It's the explanation of the trainer who trained you as to how you understand the exercise so you can impart that knowledge to your client. If you can impart the knowledge to your client because you have got very, very good training, then you don't have to remind the client every so often. So say, for example, if we're talking about the first position on the foot bar, toes apart, heels together, during the examination process of the clients will say, how wide should your feet be apart on the bar? It's 6 inches, as we were taught years ago. How wide should your knees be? Shoulder distance. Because your angle of your femur should be in line with the angle of your foot. If they're not the same, if your knees are wider than shoulder distance and your feet are 6 inches, you're going to get a torsion at the knee joint. But then we start getting into the mechanics of it as to this is where the training comes in, is why, if there are all these various positions, and I ask instructors this who've been trained, why are you going toes apart, heels together, then toes together, then heels together? Just those first three. Why are you changing your foot position? What's the point of it? They have no idea. And I'm going, what muscles are you trying to connect when you're in toes apart, heels together? And they all go inner thighs. And I'm going, but your inner thigh is already working because you're at that angle of shoulder distance. If your inner thighs weren't holding, if your adductors weren't holding you, your legs would flop right open. So your adductors are working. Your quadriceps are your prime movers to press you away. What muscles do you need to be working? You don't need to work your quads. So when you push away, you say, push away, come back down, push away, come back down. What's the point of it? So then we go into the mechanics of it and go, right, if you squeeze your heels together really tightly, your lateral hamstring connects. That's it. Flick that lateral hamstring, your biceps femoris, flick that. You can see how it's soft if your heels are slightly apart. Squeeze your heels together, notice how it connects. Then the ones that don't connect, because your adductors are connecting, the ones that don't connect are your medial hamstrings, your semimembranosus and your semitendinosus, because look, they won't work. But they will work if you cheat. And the cheating way is squeezing your backside when you extend away, but then that'll give you an arch in your back, so your back won't be flat. And that'll also move your pelvis as well, not keep neutral. When you're coming down and you tilt your tailbone up a little bit, that'll connect your medial hamstring, but again, you're compromising the stability of your pelvis and your spine. So therefore, you've got to keep those flat. It will take you at least 20 sessions to get those medial hamstrings to work, but only if you put your fingers into them to get the reaction from the contact, because the best form of feedback is contact. So
Right.
this is what the point of the exercise is, to work your medial hamstrings. Rather than just push away, come back down, do 10 of those. Now change your foot position to toes together. Now push away, come back down. So if they understand that, so all my clients now, they all know to squeeze their heels together when they press away and know where to put their fingers. And I come along and I check, is that working? Is that working? Right, watch your tailbone. So we have a 2-coin principle, which we use, which we'll probably do in another podcast.
Right. No, but it's amazing to me because, teachers will say so the client's doing this, but they're not feeling it where I want them to feel it or whatever it is. And I'm like, but they're doing it. So, if they're on their side and they're doing the good old inner thigh lift that, we've all been doing for 50 years. If they're lifting their leg, their inner thigh is working. I don't care if they feel it. It doesn't matter if they feel it, quite frankly. If they're in the right position and they're lifting their leg up, their inner thigh's working, because that's the only thing that lifts your leg up in that position.
Exactly.
There's no other way to do it. And that for me, Alan, is really the beauty of a lot of the Pilates exercises, is that you don't have to really worry about doing them right. If you're doing them, then you're getting the work. I mean, in general, if you're doing them and you're in the right position, that work is happening. That strengthening is happening.
Yeah.
And the more we kind of futz with it, the more we're like, oh, well, do you feel this? Do you feel that? Do you feel? The more we just kind of water it down. I'll say to my clients as I'm teaching them online, they'll be like, well, I don't really feel this here. And I'm like, well, you don't need to really feel it there. It's working, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to be in this position.
Yeah. And that's what I say to clients. I said, don't put your fingers into muscles that are already working, because they're already working. Right. Find the muscle that's not working. And even Romana said, bad Pilates is good for you, because it's just moving the body. It's moving the body. Exactly. And then once they've got the movement, then focus on detail. Then focus on, right, now let's tweak it. Now that we're doing it, because I don't want you to get bored by just doing toes by heels together 10 times and then changing it, because you'll get bored. Let's do something where you can actually feel it happening.
Right. And then also all of the reminders in footwork. Pretend like you're standing, you're doing a squat, you're sitting and standing, you're breathing, your shoulders are back, your breastbone is lifting, you're doing all the things while we're here, and then it becomes a full body exercise and a full body experience, and people leave a lot happier, because that's what they're coming for. Now, speaking of getting into the modifications and variations, you have an online 3-hour back pain course. And listeners, you're going to look in the show notes, because there's going to be a link and there's going to be a discount code for you to get that course at 50% off, which is going to be Alan breaking down the exercises of Pilates for different causes of back pain, talking about different causes of back pain, what they are, how to modify and vary for them. And this 3-hour workshop can be yours for under $100 if you use the code in the show notes. And I thank you for that, Alan, as do my listeners, because I know a lot of them can use it.
Yeah, look, there are ideas there. It's not a training course. It's a course that you can get a lot of information from, that you can actually use for your own people who've got back problems and things like that. And this is from experience. I got into Pilates through a severe back problem myself many years ago. So consequently, I've just worked with a lot of backs over a period of time. And a lot of back problem people have been sent to me by physios to say, look, he's the guy to go to for back problems, because he's got the experience. So it's, little variations. So it's got a lot of information there. It's take it piece at a time, because there's so much information. You might have to look at it 3 or 4 times. But look, I'll give you the discount code as well. It'd be fantastic.
Great. So we'll have a discount code. We'll have the link in the show notes. And once again, Alan, it's always a pleasure talking to you.
You too. Thank you very much, Lynda. I really look forward to these, and hopefully we'll do it again on a different topic.
I'm sure we will. I have no doubt. So everybody, thank you so, so much once again for joining me on the Pilates Goddess podcast. I hope you found this discussion with Allan Menezes to be illuminating and interesting. And, I hope that you're thinking, if you're going to start a Pilates teacher training, about how you want to approach that. And you can always reach out to Allan directly or to me directly. And obviously we have opinions on these things. And if you're already a certified teacher and you just want to learn more about actual Pilates and teaching, the kind of folks who come into the studio all the time who really need us, reach on out. All of Allan's contact information will be in the show notes, and you guys know how to get in touch with me. So thanks again. And please, if you love the podcast, I'm going to ask, head on over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. So thank you, Allan, for joining us super early in the morning.
Thanks,
it's like
Lynda.
4 o'clock here in New York, but I know it's really early in the morning there. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.